In this class, we're going to practice a very important grammar topic called modal verbs.
If you are a beginner level student, please turn on the subtitles in the language of your choice.
This is the full list of modal verbs, starting with can, could, might, may, should, ought to, shall, and will. The first modal verb, which is also one of the most common ones that we use, is can. And we use can for permission and ability. For example, I can cook, I can dance, I can sing, and the negative would be can't or can't. The difference in pronunciation is can't sounds more American and can't sounds more British. You can choose the pronunciation that you prefer to use. Here is an example. I can cook, I can't cook, or I can't cook. Now, can also be used for permission, and it's quite common to hear somebody say, can I? For example, teacher, can I go to the bathroom? Yes, you can. However, we do try to teach children to use may as well, because may is a bit more formal and polite. So for example, teacher, may I go to the bathroom? Yes, you may. Can also be used for offers. For example, can I help you? It's a nice way of offering to help somebody. Modal verb could. Now, could has two uses, so be careful with could. Could can be the past tense of can. For example, when I was younger, I could run very fast, but now I can't. So it shows a past ability. And also, could can be used in the present with a similar meaning to might. Now, we could say, for example, I might go to the party, or I could go to the party, and that means that something is possible. There's a 50-50 chance, more or less. But I could also use might in that case, and might also shows possibility, like I might go out for dinner tonight. I might watch a movie after work. So could and might have a similar meaning. Next, we'll look at the modal verb will, which is very easy because we use this for the future simple in front of the main verb. For example, I will travel. I will eat lunch. I will go home. We often contract will with the personal pronoun. For example, I'll go home. I'll study for the test. She'll watch some Netflix. He'll eat lunch. They'll take a vacation soon. Next, the modal verb would. Now, would also has two uses. It can be used to talk about something you did in the past in a similar way to how we would use used to, which is a topic I will cover in a future video. For example, when he was younger, he would play video games every day after school. That means that he used to play video games every day after school. It was a regular habit or routine in the past. But we most commonly use would to talk about something that is possible. For example, I would like to take a vacation, but it's not planned, it's not definite. I'm talking about something I would like to do. I would take a vacation, but I need more money. It talks about my intention, something I would like to do, but in this case, not possible. Another example, I would love to live in a mansion. It's not possible, but I can dream. Next up, the modal verb must. Now, must has a sense of being a very strong modal verb. It means that something is essential or necessary and very strict. We often talk about rules using must. For example, we must arrive at work on time, or in the negative, you must not smoke in this building. A similar verb, although not quite as strong and a little more formal sounding, is ought to. Ought to is for giving strong recommendations. For example, you don't sound very well. You ought to see a doctor. You ought to be on time for work. The most common modal verb for giving recommendations and suggestions, however, is should. You should watch this movie. It's really good. You should try this new restaurant. Now, these are suggestions. There is no consequence if you don't follow my advice. I'm just giving you a recommendation. However, with ought to and must, there is a sense that there could be a negative consequence if you don't follow the advice or recommendation. You ought to go to the doctor because if you don't, you might get more sick. You must arrive at work on time because if you don't, you'll be in trouble with the boss. You see how there's a possible consequence. Next, we have the modal verb shall, which is one of the least common modal verbs that we use in English. Shall can be used in a similar way to will. However, it does sound a little old. We don't use it often in modern spoken English. Sometimes in British English, you'll hear shall being used in place of will. For example, I shall go to the party. But more commonly in modern English, we use it for suggestions. For example, shall we go to a movie? Or as a tag question, which is a statement with a short question at the end, such as, let's go to a restaurant for dinner, shall we? That is a common form of shall that is still used, and I recommend that you learn it. The modal verb may has two uses. verbs, one for permission, as I gave you an example before, may I leave early? And also for possibility in a similar way to might. He may be at home, or he may be at the store, I'm not sure. It's a similar way of saying might. A couple of important points to remember with modal verbs. We do not add the s in the third person. For example, the modal verb can is the same for all subjects. I can, you can, he can, she can, it can, we can, they can. We do not add an s. And also, because we use a modal verb usually before another verb, for example, I can cook, we do not add the word to before the main verb. It is called the bare infinitive. So I can cook, not I can to cook. We do not add to after any of the modal verbs. Leave me some examples of how you use modal verbs in the comments below, and I'll give you some feedback. If you have any questions, of course, leave me a comment and I'll be happy to respond to you. Thanks guys, see you in the next video.
Here is a summary of all of the modal verbs. Please take a screenshot and save this information for future reference.